If you've been eating less, trying to move more, and doing your best to stay disciplined, but the fat around your middle still refuses to budge, I want you to hear this. It does not automatically mean you are lazy. It does not mean you are weak. And it does not mean you have failed. I have seen too many people blame themselves when the truth is far more complicated than that. Belly fat is not caused by one single thing. It can be influenced by how much you eat, how well you sleep, how much stress you carry, how active you are, how your blood sugar responds to food, and yes, even how your body changes with age. And one part of the day quietly affects nearly all of those things. Your morning. Now, I am not going to tell you that one perfect morning will magically burn belly fat. That is not how the body works. But the way you begin your day can influence how hungry you feel. That is where these Japanese morning habits become so useful. They are not extreme, they do not require a gym membership, and they are not built around punishing your body. They are small, practical habits that make the rest of the day a little easier to manage. In the next few minutes, I am going to show you 7 of them. One involves a coffee habit many people never question, even though it may be setting up that familiar afternoon crash. One is a Japanese eating principle that can help you stop overeating without counting every calorie. And the last habit may be the most important of all. Not because it is something you eat, not because it is something you drink, and not because it is another exercise routine. It is about what you refuse to give your attention to during the first part of your morning. Because sometimes, the biggest threat to a healthy day is not what you put into your body. It is what you allow into your mind before the day has even begun. Before we get into the 7 habits, there is one important idea that changes the way you look at all of them. People often assume Japan has one secret, or that Japanese people simply have more self-control than everyone else. I don't think that's the real story. Japan's lower obesity rate was not built on one habit. It reflects an entire way of living. Smaller portions become normal from childhood. Walking is simply part of getting through the day. Many people rely less on cars and naturally move more without thinking about it. Traditional meals are often built around balance rather than excess. And perhaps most importantly, daily life is filled with small routines that make overeating a little less automatic. That doesn't mean every Japanese person is healthy. And it certainly doesn't mean these 7 habits explain everything. Your weight is still influenced by nutrition, sleep, movement, stress, age, medical conditions, and many other factors. These habits are not designed to magically remove fat from one specific part of your body. They simply support the conditions that make healthy weight management easier over time. And that's the idea I hope you remember long after this video ends. The Japanese advantage is not stronger willpower. It's creating an environment where healthy decisions require less willpower in the first place. When the healthier choice becomes the easier choice, you stop relying on motivation every single day. That's why the 7 habits you're about to see matter. Not because they're magical, but because they quietly make good decisions easier to repeat. And the first one begins with something so ordinary that most people overlook it every single morning. A simple glass of water. Not because the water is magical, but because of what it prevents you from doing next. Habit 1. Water before stimulation. Let's begin with something so simple that most people underestimate it. A glass of water. After 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body naturally wakes up a little dehydrated. Before you reach for coffee, before you check your phone, before the day starts asking something from you, give your body water first. Not because water has some magical fat-burning power. It doesn't. Its job is much quieter than that. It helps relieve the thirst that builds overnight, supports normal body function, and gives you one small, intentional action before the world begins competing for your attention. In many Japanese homes, warm water is simply a gentle way to begin the day. Not a wellness trend, not a detox, just a calm transition from rest to activity. That may be the real lesson. The Japanese approach often isn't about shocking the body awake. It's about letting the body wake up gradually. Most mornings in the West begin with stimulation: coffee, notifications, emails, news headlines, social media. Before we've taken our first real breath, the outside world has already taken over. A simple glass of water creates a pause between waking up and reacting. And sometimes, that pause is more valuable than the water itself. Because the water doesn't replace belly fat, it replaces something else. It might replace a sugary drink. It might delay that first cup of coffee by a few minutes. Or it might stop you from spending the first 10 minutes of your day scrolling without even realizing it. That's where much of its value comes from. Now, whether the water is warm or room temperature isn't nearly as important as simply drinking it. If you enjoy lemon, add a slice for flavor. If you don't, plain water works perfectly well. And unless your healthcare provider has advised otherwise, there is no need to automatically add salt to your morning water. The goal isn't to create the perfect drink. The goal is to create the right first habit. So here's something you can do tonight. Before you go to bed, place a glass beside your kettle, your coffee machine, or anywhere you'll naturally look first tomorrow morning. Make water the easiest decision you'll make all day, because the best first habit doesn't depend on motivation. It is already waiting for you when you wake up. Water begins the routine, but the next habit teaches your body something even more important. It teaches your internal clock that a new day has truly begun. Habit 2, morning light and your body's internal clock. The second habit costs nothing, and yet it may be one of the most overlooked parts of a healthy morning. Light. Not the light from your phone, not the light coming through a window. Natural outdoor light. Soon after waking, your body is looking for one simple signal. It wants to know that the day has begun. Morning light helps set your internal clock, guiding the transition from sleep to wakefulness and helping your body understand when it should be alert now and when it should feel sleepy later tonight. And when that daily rhythm becomes more consistent, everything else tends to become a little easier. Better sleep can support steadier energy. Steadier energy can make movement feel less like a chore. And when you're less exhausted, making healthier food choices often requires less effort. That's why one of my favorite ways to explain it is this. Your body does not read the time from your watch. It reads the difference between darkness and daylight. That simple signal has been guiding human biology for thousands of years. In Japan, many people naturally build this into their day through something called Sanpo, a simple neighborhood walk. For most people, especially older adults, it isn't treated as exercise. They walk to the train station, stop by a local shop, visit a nearby shrine, or simply take a quiet loop through the neighborhood before the day becomes busy. It's not about burning calories. It's about beginning the day with movement, light, and a calmer pace. Now, a few practical notes. You don't need to stare at the sun. In fact, don't. Simply being outside allows your eyes to receive much stronger natural light than they would through a window. If you wake before sunrise, that's perfectly fine. Go outside when daylight becomes available. And if it's cloudy, you may simply need to spend a little more time outdoors. Tomorrow morning, choose one small step. Stand outside with your glass of water for 5 minutes. Drink it near your front door, or take a slow walk around the block before checking your phone. Remember, morning light doesn't force your body to lose weight. What it does is give your body a clearer daily schedule. And when your body follows a steadier rhythm, healthier decisions often become easier to repeat. Light tells your body what time it is. The next habit asks a different question. Is your morning coffee working with that rhythm, or quietly working against it? Habit 3. Experiment with delaying your first coffee. Now, let's talk about a habit that surprises almost everyone: your morning coffee. For many of us, making coffee is practically the first thing we do after getting out of bed. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying coffee. The question isn't whether coffee is good or bad. The question is whether the timing is working for you. Caffeine works by temporarily blocking the feeling of sleep pressure, helping you feel more awake. For some people, drinking coffee immediately after waking can be followed later in the day by a sharper afternoon crash, a stronger need for another cup, irritability, or even cravings for something sweet. But here's something important. Not everyone responds the same way. Some people feel perfectly fine with early coffee. Others notice a real difference when they wait. That's why I don't think of this as a rule. I think of it as an experiment. The useful question is not whether early coffee is universally wrong. It's whether your coffee creates energy or quietly borrows it from the afternoon. So here's a simple 3-day challenge. For the next 3 mornings, drink your water first. Step outside for natural light if you can. Then wait somewhere between 30 and 90 minutes before having your first cup of coffee. You don't have to be perfect. Just notice what happens. Pay attention to how you feel around 10 o'clock in the morning, again around 3 in the afternoon. Notice whether you're reaching for sugar. Notice whether you feel like you need another coffee. And notice how easily you fall asleep that night. In Japanese culture, there is a beautiful idea called ma. It means creating an intentional space between 2 actions. In this case, it simply means allowing your morning to begin before adding another layer of stimulation. Now, if you regularly wake up with headaches without caffeine, work overnight shifts, or take medications that affect your daily routine, don't force yourself into a strict schedule. Adjust gradually. The goal isn't to win a contest. The goal is to understand your own body a little better. Because the best routine is never the one that sounds the most scientific. It's the one that makes your real life noticeably better. The first 3 habits have quietly shaped the beginning of your morning. The next one changes something just as important: the way you eat once breakfast finally arrives. Habit 4. Hara Hachi Bu, stop at comfortable, not complete. The 4th habit has been practiced in Japan for generations. It's called Hara Hachi Bu. You've probably heard it translated as eat until you're 80% full. But I don't think that's the most helpful way to understand it. After all, no one can actually measure 80%. The real idea is much simpler. Stop eating before you become uncomfortably full. This tradition is most closely associated with Okinawa, one of the world's well-known blue zones, where many people enjoy long, active lives. But Hara Hachi Bu was never created as a modern weight loss strategy. It was learned as a way of eating. A reminder to practice moderation, to pay attention, to respect the body's signals, and to stop because your body has had enough, not simply because food is still sitting on the table. I think one of the most valuable lessons behind this habit is that most of us recognize only 2 states: hungry or completely full. Hara Hachi Bu teaches a third one: I'm no longer hungry, even though I could keep eating. That small difference changes everything. One simple way to practice it is during your next meal. When you're about halfway finished, put your fork, spoon, or chopsticks down completely. Take 3 slow breaths. Notice how your stomach actually feels. Then ask yourself one quiet question. If I stopped eating right now, would I probably feel comfortable 20 minutes from now? You don't have to answer perfectly, you just have to notice. Japanese meals naturally support this slower rhythm: smaller bowls, separate dishes, chopsticks, food served in portions instead of one large plate. None of those things magically causes weight loss. What they do is create tiny pauses that interrupt automatic eating. The environment gently slows you down before your appetite has a chance to outrun your awareness. Now, this isn't advice for everyone. If you're underweight, recovering from illness, at risk of malnutrition, or following medical guidance to increase your food intake, this habit may not be appropriate in the same way. Always work with the needs of your own body, because the goal isn't to leave the table hungry. The goal is to recognize satisfaction before discomfort arrives. Eating more slowly changes how much food enters your body. The next habit changes something different: what your body does with that food after the meal has already begun. Habit 5. Sanpo, the power of gentle movement. If there's one form of exercise almost everyone can do, it's walking. No special equipment, no gym membership, no complicated routine. Just one foot in front of the other. In Japan, this everyday habit has a name when it's done with intention: Sanpo. It simply means taking a walk, but it represents something much deeper than exercise. For many Japanese people, especially older adults, Sanpo isn't treated as a workout. There is no stopwatch, no calorie counter, no pressure to break a personal record. It's simply part of life. Walking to the train station, picking up groceries, visiting a neighborhood shrine, or taking a quiet walk before the streets become busy. That may be one reason it lasts. Walking supports many of the things that help people stay healthy over time. It contributes to daily movement. It helps maintain mobility. It may support healthy blood sugar after meals. It can reduce stress. And perhaps most importantly, it's something people are actually willing to keep doing. Now, I want to make one important distinction. Sometimes people hear advice like this and assume it means intense exercise is somehow bad. That isn't true. A temporary rise in stress hormones during a hard workout is completely different from living with constant, chronic stress. Strength training, running, cycling, and other vigorous exercise can be incredibly beneficial when they fit your body, your schedule, and your ability to recover. The lesson isn't that walking is better than every other form of exercise. The lesson is that gentle walking is often the easiest place to begin and the easiest habit to maintain, especially if you're tired, just getting started, recovering from illness, or simply trying to become more active without overwhelming yourself. If you want to put this into practice, keep it simple. Your minimum goal is 5 minutes outside. A practical goal is a 10-minute walk after your largest meal, and when time allows, a relaxed 20-minute walk in the morning can become a wonderful way to begin the day. One more suggestion: for the first few minutes, leave your phone in your pocket. Let your eyes notice the trees, the buildings, the changing light, and the people around you. Give your mind a chance to arrive where your body already is. Because the best movement routine isn't the one that burns the most calories in one morning. It's the one you'll still be doing 6 months from now. Movement helps prepare your body for the day ahead. The next habit changes something different: what you naturally reach for when your energy begins to fade. Habit 6. Green tea, a better replacement, not a magic drink. The sixth habit isn't about finding another miracle drink. It's about making a better everyday choice. In Japan, green tea isn't treated as a health trend. It's simply part of daily life. You'll find it at breakfast tables, family meals, neighborhood cafes, and office break rooms. Not because people expect one cup to transform their health, but because it's become an ordinary habit they rarely have to think about. Green tea contains natural compounds called catechins, along with a small amount of caffeine. Researchers have studied these compounds for their possible effects on metabolism and overall health. Some studies suggest modest benefits. Others find the effects are relatively small. Either way, green tea isn't a shortcut to weight loss, and it doesn't need to be, because I think its greatest value comes from something much simpler. Not what it adds, but what it replaces. One less oversized sugary drink, one less sweetened bottled beverage, one less second coffee out of habit, or one less impulsive snack grabbed during a stressful afternoon. Sometimes the healthiest choice isn't adding another superfood. It's quietly removing something less helpful. In Japan, making tea also creates a small ritual: boiling the water, waiting for the leaves to steep, holding a warm cup, sitting for a moment before rushing into the next task. Once again, we return to the Japanese idea of ma, the intentional space between two moments. That pause may be just as valuable as the tea itself. Tomorrow, try replacing one sweetened drink or your second coffee with a cup of unsweetened green tea. Then do something even more important. Sit with it for 2 minutes. No phone, no scrolling, just drink it. If you're sensitive to caffeine, enjoy it earlier in the day or choose a lower caffeine variety. And remember, drinking green tea is very different from taking concentrated green tea extract supplements. If tea doesn't feel good on an empty stomach, there's no need to force it. Listen to your body, because some healthy habits don't improve your life by adding one more thing. They improve it by quietly replacing something that wasn't helping you in the first place. The first 6 habits have gently supported your body. The final habit protects every one of them from being interrupted before they even have a chance to work. Habit 7. Seijaku, protect the first 30 minutes of your day. We've reached the final habit. And in many ways, it may be the one that protects all the others. It isn't another food. It isn't another drink. And it isn't another exercise routine. It's what you choose not to do during the first 30 minutes after you wake up. For many of us, the phone has become the first thing we reach for each morning, before we stand up, before we drink water, before we step outside, before we've even had a chance to decide how we want to begin the day. Within seconds, we're reading emails, scrolling through headlines, checking social media, or responding to someone else's priorities. The problem isn't that one notification suddenly creates belly fat. It doesn't. The real problem is much quieter. Your phone can decide the emotional direction of your morning before you've made a single conscious decision for yourself. Instead of beginning the day with intention, the day begins by reacting. In Japanese culture, there is a beautiful idea called seijaku. It is often translated as stillness or tranquility. But seijaku doesn't require sitting cross-legged in silent meditation. Sometimes it is much simpler than that. It's drinking your water without distraction, opening the front door and feeling the morning air, preparing breakfast without a screen nearby, taking a quiet walk before the world becomes noisy, or simply allowing the day to begin before inviting the digital world into it. That quiet beginning changes more than you might expect, not because silence is magical, but because attention is limited. Every notification competes for it. Every headline asks for it. Every scroll trains your brain to react instead of choose. So if you want to try this tomorrow morning, don't begin by relying on willpower. Change the environment instead. Charge your phone somewhere outside the bedroom. Use a separate alarm clock if you need one. Allow emergency calls from family, but keep social media closed for the first 30 minutes. And if 30 minutes feels impossible right now, start with 10. Small changes repeated consistently are far more powerful than perfect routines that last only a weekend. Because here's the deeper lesson. When the phone is out of reach, You don't have to win an argument with yourself. You already made the decision the night before. And that's one of the quiet secrets behind so many Japanese habits. They don't depend on constant self-control. They make self-control necessary less often. Discipline becomes much easier when your environment removes the temptation before it ever appears. Build one ordinary morning. If you look back at these 7 habits, you'll notice something interesting. None of them asks you to become a different person overnight. None of them depends on extraordinary discipline, and none of them is trying to fight your body. Instead, they quietly work together. Water interrupts automatic stimulation. Morning light gives your body a clearer sense of time. Delaying coffee helps you discover your natural energy instead of immediately covering it up. Hara Hachi Bu teaches you to recognize enough. Sanpo turns movement into something ordinary instead of something you have to force yourself to do. Green tea replaces choices that may no longer be serving you. And Seijaku protects all of those habits before the digital world has a chance to interrupt them. Different habits, different Japanese words, but they all point toward the same idea. Life becomes healthier when good decisions become easier than unhealthy ones. That, more than anything else, is the lesson I hope you take away from this video. These habits are not powerful because they're uniquely Japanese, and they're certainly not powerful because they're biologically magical. They're powerful because they quietly reduce the distance between what you want to do and what you actually end up doing. They make healthy choices easier. Not perfect, just easier. And sometimes, that's all lasting change really needs. So please don't wake up tomorrow and try to do all 7. Choose one. Just one. If your mornings always feel rushed, begin with water. If you're constantly tired, begin with morning light. If your afternoons disappear into coffee and sugar, try the coffee experiment. If overeating is your biggest challenge, practice Hara Hachi Bu. If you hardly move during the day, begin with a short walk. If sweet drinks have become automatic, replace one with green tea. And if your phone has quietly taken ownership of your mornings, begin with Seiyaku. Stay with that one habit for 7 days. Don't judge it after one morning. Don't judge it after one mistake. Repeat it until it feels ordinary. Only then add the next one. Because healthy bodies are rarely built through heroic mornings. They're built through ordinary mornings, repeated again and again, until they quietly become part of who you are. Maybe you've spent years believing your body was working against you. Maybe you've blamed yourself for not having enough discipline. But perhaps the real problem was never your body. Perhaps every morning, your environment was quietly pulling you in the opposite direction. The Japanese approach reminds us of something surprisingly simple. You don't always need more motivation. Sometimes you simply need fewer obstacles. Tomorrow morning, before the coffee, before the phone, before the noise, there will be one quiet moment, one small decision. That moment may seem insignificant, but moments like that, repeated hundreds of times, quietly become the life you live. Because the goal isn't to control your body more aggressively. It's to create a morning where your body no longer has to fight your environment. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Which one of these 7 habits would make the biggest difference in your morning tomorrow? Don't write a long explanation. Just leave the number in the comments. And don't choose the habit that sounds the most impressive. Choose the one your life needs the most right now. Then come back in 7 days and tell us what changed. I genuinely love to hear your experience. And if you know someone who's been blaming themselves for not having enough discipline, share this video with them. Because they may not need stronger willpower. They may simply need a better first hour of the day. A better life rarely begins with one extraordinary decision. It begins with one ordinary morning. Lived well, again and again.